Okay. Everybody's asking me about this Liver King thing. What do I think? What's my feedback? Look, guys, I've been very, very clear from the beginning as soon as this dude launched in, what was it, like mid 2021, all of a sudden out of nowhere, that he uses PEDs. If you've been around that world, if you've personally used PEDs yourself, as I have, then this was not a mystery to you. This was very, very clear. I mean, the guy's in his mid 40s. So basically, if you're a man and you're at that age, things don't generally build over time at that point. You're usually trying to preserve and stave off catabolism, or muscle tissue decreasing in size. And the fact that he was not experiencing any of that was a dead giveaway. But even beyond that, guys, the dude's vascularity, the fact that he had those turtle shell abs that protruded out so ridiculously. I mean, every aspect of it, for me, I never even had a moment where I was like, maybe this guy actually is natty. And I think a lot of people have asked me about him because I've been very open about my own steroid usage and peptide usage and growth hormone usage. And I see no reason why you shouldn't be honest about that stuff. I think that the fact that he did issue an apology is, well, I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on it because honestly, I feel like he is only doing it because he got caught. I mean, clearly, if the guy never got called out, he would have kept pushing what he was pushing and denying usage. And look, I think there are two ways that fake natty, quote unquote, people go about it. One is to just never have the conversation. So never to say you use them or say you don't use them. You just don't talk about them, which is what a lot of guys do. But Liver King specifically, explicitly denied using any exogenous hormones time and time and time again.
You're giving me a sidetrack, but I'll say this. Do you think if I was on steroids, I would have these fucking appendages down here, these legs?
Have legs?
Do you see how fucking little my fucking legs are?
So he was confronted with the question and lied directly to the person asking the question about it. So that's why a lot of people are upset. I think that if he had just gone on doing what he was doing, advocating the ancestral tenets, and just not talking about it, period, then it wouldn't be a big deal. I think most people would just be like, oh yeah, of course that guy uses steroids. I mean, look at him, right? Now, I do think it's worth mentioning that the net effect of Liver King on the world is probably still a positive one. Now, hear me out. I make this analogy a lot of times when I talk about CrossFit. So, well, I don't think it's an analogy, but my philosophy with CrossFit, because a lot of people say that it's a bad thing because of all the injuries that result from it, from people trying to do Olympic lifts for time that are extremely complex and require perfect form. And of course, if you do things for time, your form breaks down, people get injured. So there are a lot of critics of CrossFit for that and other reasons. And all of that is true. But what I say to that, and look, I fully agree with that sentiment, but CrossFit got more barbells in people's hands over the past decade than anything. I mean, you can say what you want about it, but it got so many people up and moving. And I think there is some net positive from that. I mean, a lot of people are now at the stage where they started with CrossFit, but now they're just doing Olympic lifting. They found a passion for that. Or they're powerlifting. They found a passion for that. Or they're still doing CrossFit. Or they've taken up rowing. Or, the net result has been positive of CrossFit. It got people moving. It got barbells in hands. It got asses off of couches. So I think that with Liver King, yes, he lied. He's been using a large amount of growth hormone, and he's been using testosterone and other exogenous hormonal supplements since he started this thing, and he blatantly denied that he was doing so. But much like CrossFit got barbells in people's hands, Liver King, all the qualms you may have with him, and I do as well, he got a lot of people to start to think about eating organ meats, getting sun exposure, getting cold exposure, being a better human. And I think there is some positive in that. I try to look at everything as something with net benefits in one direction or the other. I think just about everything in this world has both positive and negative effects. And Thomas Sowell said, what? There are no solutions, just trade-offs, right? So there's no perfect solution. I mean, you could argue that had Liver King not used the PEDs that he has used, he wouldn't have become the large personality that he did, and therefore would not have impacted it and influenced as many people to use these ancestral tenets, to eat organ meats, etc. We don't know. You can't run that experiment. But I will say that the dude grew to over 1 million followers in like a year on Instagram and has undoubtedly had a positive impact probably on young men and women, and gotten them to eat liver, to eat heart, to do these things that I think are positive. Now, he's probably also impacted people such that they thought they could achieve the physique he has by just doing the 9 ancestral tenets. So there is some negative effects to it as well. I remember being a young kid in the late 90s reading muscle magazines and actually thinking at the time, I mean, I was 12 years old, right? 11, 12 years old, something like that, that Ronnie Coleman is what I could look like if I just kept lifting weights, eating meat, all of this stuff. Obviously, I learned a little later, he's using a ton of steroids and growth hormone and insulin and everything else. So that, I think, is just something that is going to happen. I think a lot of these, we as humans are attracted to outliers. We are attracted to these characters that grab our attention, right? Arnold, steroids, right? Sylvester Stallone, steroids. Like Hulk Hogan, steroids. I mean, baseball was exciting for a while because of steroids. And because we are attracted to the extremes. Now, you can leverage that, I think, to do some good in this world. However, I think you can leverage that to do some good in this world while also being honest about it. So I'm very interested in seeing where Brian, the Liver King guy, takes this now. He actually seems to be quite knowledgeable about exogenous hormones and performance-enhancing drugs. So I'd really love if he talked about that stuff more and openly. Because, look, at the end of the day, the dude has achieved an amazing physique by living the way that he has. And I know tons of dudes who use tons of PEDs that don't look anywhere near as good as this guy. So there is something to say for that. I mean, all the BS aside, the guy has achieved a phenomenal level of shreddedness while maintaining muscle mass. And I think most guys would not be disappointed if they woke up one day and looked like that, right? And I always said from the beginning, if he had just been open about his usage, I would have loved following along. I mean, here's a guy that is in his mid-40s. He's using test and GH, but he's also living by these 9 tenets. He's eating raw liver and other organs and bone marrow and all this stuff. And look at the effect that it's having on his physique. He looks phenomenal, right? And he has high sustained energy levels through the day, and he's very productive and accomplished. I mean, the dude is a multimillionaire, and his companies are doing like $100 million a year. And I think that there's still a lot for him to offer the world. I just hope that it's more transparent now, and I think it will be. I think he has no choice but to be. And I do think that people will embrace authenticity if he offers it up at this point. We'll see. I think he's probably justified it to himself in the following manner. He created a character called the Liver King. That character is not really him. He was portraying a character on social media. He needed to use steroids in order for that character to be who he needed to be, this loud, boisterous, in-your-face, impressive physique, because it was to the end means of putting these 9 ancestral tenets in front of people and changing people's lives, blah, 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 blah. I think that's probably how he's justifying it to himself. I'm not saying that it's justified. I'm just saying that's probably what he has done. My hope now is that he acknowledges that and is completely open and transparent as just a normal dude talking about these things. I think that would be fascinating, and I think he can salvage his reputation. It's just going to be a new chapter. He's no longer going to be able to be the Liver King as he intended. But I think he can be something more and something better, and we as humans do recognize the flaws of humanity, right? The guy lied. He made a mistake. He admitted to it for whatever that's worth. I don't know how genuine it is. We'll see. But there is some appeal to being authentic, owning up to your mistakes, right? And I do think he still has a lot to offer the world. We'll see where it goes from here. I think the guy is definitely a business and marketing genius. We've talked about him on the show before with Andy Lewis, my buddy from Norse Fitness, as well as Jacob Davis, who has the nutrition store. And there's no doubt about that. What he achieved in a year is phenomenal. It's insane, right? But my hope now is that he recognizes that he has this opportunity to talk about that, explore that concept, talk about that character, how you developed it, how you executed that plan, right? And talk about the stuff you're using, because there are a lot of mid 40-something dudes who would probably love to look like him. And they're like, okay, here's the stuff I need to take. Here are the exogenous hormones I need to take, obviously under the supervision of a doctor. And yes, I'll eat organ meats and I'll do all these healthy things, right? There's still some value there. Yeah, I guess that's sort of my final thoughts on Liver King, since everybody's asked me how I feel about him. I think it's like CrossFit. Bad shit about it, good shit about it, net positive on the world probably. Got more barbells in hands than anything else. Liver King, bad shit about him, some good shit about him. Probably a net positive, we'll see. But he's definitely gotten a lot more people eating organ meats, eating meat in general, thinking more about living in a manner that humans evolved. So we'll see.